Good afternoon, Coach Vanek. How are you?
I'm excellent, Mr. Harding. How are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you. I am, as you must have heard from your athletic director, Peter Harding. I am a sports psychologist consultant. I am here on behalf of Blue Mountains athletic director who reached out to me upon your request. Can you tell me a little bit about your conversation?
Sure, yeah. So I am the girls varsity soccer coach at Blue Mountain. This will be my fourth year here. So we do have a younger group of players. They're extremely talented. They've been playing their whole lives. Travel teams, just putting a lot of time and dedication. The parents put a lot of time and dedication in, and money, obviously. They just haven't had the experience playing at the highest level, the varsity level yet, because they're freshmen, so they're just coming in new to that. And along with that group of players, we do have several upperclassmen who do have that experience playing at the varsity level. Some have played varsity all 4 years. Um, and I found that with the upperclassmen, they have so much experience that they kind of just go through the motions. They come to practice, they play their games, but they're just not putting in the extra time and the extra effort, I think, even more mentally. So they're lacking that leadership and the desire to win. So as leaders of my team, I'm not gonna make a new freshman my captain. I want those varsity players, those seniors to be my captains. But in my opinion, or what's even worse is that they do a poor job of helping the younger players grow, which I think is an important part of being a senior. Isn't that what you want to do? You want to help the younger teammates grow and become what you are today. Um, so they don't really show any interest in trying to improve their own game. So I approached our athletic director about any resources or outside speakers that could come in and talk to not only myself, but our team, our players. And she told me she could have a sports psychologist stop in for just an initial visit to kind of get a gauge on what's going on, and speak to me to see if this was something we could pursue or if we needed.
Well, Coach, you're not the first team I've been asked to help in this situation. It's very quite common for high school teams without a winning history, even if that history is just 3 or 4 years old of unsuccessful seasons. That's enough time for high school athletes, a majority of whom, especially this day and age, want that instant gratification to forget about their school's history. I'm not 100% sure, and this is something I would hope to learn about the school and your program, but maybe 10 years ago or even 5 years ago, you guys were winning. From maybe prior to you as a coach, you guys were winning. And as a high schooler, you don't really pay attention to that stuff if you were in seventh grade or sixth grade. And so they might not be aware of things like that. I personally was a part of a team like this when I was in high school. We could have had a lot more success than we did. It's very difficult because student athlete mentalities can be very malleable. They change day to day. They definitely change year to year. Injuries, playing time, growth spurts, everything can change those situations for them. And so I would love to offer my expertise. My goals are to get to know you, get to know the team, anybody else who are members of the team or that make up the team. I would like to shed some light on what I can offer to help your team. And I would be introducing you to my philosophy, how I expect to work with your team, and just trying to get you to have a better understanding of how I can help your team and the instance that you described to me. Have you ever had interactions with sports psychology at the interscholastic level before?
Um, as a player myself, not that I can remember specifically, we never had a sports psychologist brought in. I know a little bit about the psychology of like the mental game and preparing players. I mean, I know coaches kind of do that anyway, not probably knowing it is sports psychology, but they do it. but not professionally that I can remember. I think my coaches probably were trying to use it, but it's just hard to determine if it was on purpose or if they looked up stuff, if they had classes, lessons, spoke to someone like yourself, a sports psychology consultant. As a coach, not really either. You're the first professional I'm talking to about it. This upcoming season, like I said, is my fourth year as the head coach, and I didn't have any interactions as an assistant. I'm equally as excited, but I'm also curious as to what you have to offer because, like you said, our program is just not used to winning. Before I got here, there's been several coaches here. I mean, high coach turnover just because of not winning. Parents are getting frustrated, players are getting frustrated. So that might have something to do with it. So I'm just excited to see what you can do and help us hopefully start to work towards becoming a winning team.
Yeah, I can't wait to tell you more. I'm excited. This seems like a good situation for hopefully both of us. But one last thing before I got to talk and tell you a little bit more about myself, could I ask you one more question?
Yeah, of course.
How do you think sports psychology could help your team? You already mentioned to me about your team dynamics, so I do have an idea. The underclassmen who are talented and the upperclassmen who are talented, but just maybe not as good of leaders as you would expect. So I have an idea, but is there any more insightful information before I actually would meet the team that you can share with me that might help me comprehend why you have reached out to your athletic director, why you feel like we could be successful if we can figure out a few things together?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so if we do decide to pursue this, I can of course send you a roster with, the players' names, years, so we can get into specifics. But I mean, of the 16 players I expect to have on my team, we have 3 freshmen who, like I said, are very talented. They can all contribute to the team. They'll all get playing time. 6 sophomores, 2 of them played significant varsity time last year, so they know the game. They're going to be used to playing. Our junior class is very small, only 2 players. One of them actually just is starting to recover from an ACL injury. She'll miss the preseason and possibly the first 2 scrimmages, but I'm hoping to have her back mid-year because she's been a solid player for 2 years now. I know her talent. I just hope recovery does not get in the way. She can come back stronger than ever. And that brings us to 5 seniors who are quite talented, like I said, but as I mentioned, they lack leadership. Um, I'm afraid that even though these freshmen are talented and they could get playing time, they're not going to gel as a team and they're not going to be as successful, even though we have 11 players on the field that can be a winning team. They can go to states, in my opinion. The 7 upperclassmen also aren't too fond of the younger people, the underclassmen, which could create that divide as well. So I'm hoping mentally sports psychology could be a huge influence on us. I think we need it. As you can tell, and like I said numerous times, the team has the talent. They've put in the time when they were younger. They worked on their skills. They have the skills. They have the fitness, or they just have the raw talent needed to be successful. And I do think we could win a lot of games if we're able to keep our head straight and create a cohesive unit.
That's great information. It's really good to know. From what I've heard, I think the team needs improvement in the mental skills of motivation, mental imagery, self-talk, and concentration. The athletic director did tell me that you've done a great job so far with teaching goals and keeping things piece by piece for your players while still having those long-term goals. The attitudes have been very good on your team, and you're very, very capable of handling the emotions of the athletes on your team. And I don't know prior years, but it definitely seems like this year you have that wide span of athletes. And so I would expect that to be the same based on what your athletic director has been able to tell me about your work with the girls soccer teams. I think I can help with the skills that your athletes are lacking in. Like I said, that motivation, the mental imagery, self-talk, and concentration. I'd like to confirm that these skills are in fact the ones that need the most practice by obviously visiting and observing your team on a daily basis. Uh, it makes sense that these 4 skills seem to be the lowest for your athletes. And I'm not saying, again, I'd like to confirm that these are the skills. I'm not saying that they certainly are, but they seem to be the 4 that are the lowest, in my opinion, from what I've heard and from what your athletic director told me. And so it makes sense because mental imagery definitely helps to aid motivation, and successful athletes will also use self-talk to aid concentration. So the 4 skills that I mentioned do tie in quite nicely. By not being able to imagine success, which is kind of like that mental imagery, or use self-talk in competition, your team can lose leads late in close games. They can just lose leads in general. Maybe you're up 3 or 4 goals at halftime and your team just doesn't know how to finish a game like that. So if we can work on these skills, I think you will be able to see improvement in your team's success as it translates to winning games and perhaps even creating that cohesive unit that you talked about, especially for your situation with so many underclassmen. I think it would be a huge experience for them to start to see what can happen with this team and if they become one cohesive unit. Because overall, although it seems like your 5 seniors will all be starters, you still have 6 returning players the year after. And so if we can keep that group together and if they can learn from me, I think that would definitely help your team, not only this year, but down the road. So I would definitely like to work with your team on these 4 skills, specifically the mental imagery and self-talk, because I think those 2 can help with the other 2. So I would first be educating them. And second, we'd like to just practice on some of those skills, definitely in-game and game-like environments that we can hopefully create together. We would be working side by side.
Yeah, I do appreciate that and I like that. I mean, sometimes mental imagery and self-talk, I mean, some of the concepts can be a little big and confusing at first, but that's why I think it's so important to bring on someone like yourself, to get to know the players. And it sounds like you're going to be present, which is good. So if we can make it work, that sounds like a great plan.
I think it'll work out well. As a sports psychologist consultant, I focus more on the social psychological approach to dealing with a team and its athletes, which means I focus on each athlete's individual personal makeup and how they're affected by interactions with the social environment around the athlete, which definitely seems like something that's within your team, which you have those social tiers from your seniors to juniors, sophomores, and freshmen, especially with talented underclassmen. I can see how that would affect socially upperclassmen. So I think with my makeup too, as a sports psychology consultant, I think that'll help. My goal is to focus on and improve performance in sport. That's definitely what I'll be trying to do. And I think that ties in nicely with what you're hoping for. I would do my best to accomplish what I hope here by truly getting to know the team. So I definitely, again, want to focus on and improve that performance in sport. So with your permission, I would like to come to practices, off-season training, preseason training, bus rides, team meals. I know there's a lot. I was a high school athlete myself. I know there's a lot that goes on with it. I would like to have your permission to go to every event. This is definitely work I am very passionate about. So it is extremely important that I can observe the team in as many situations as possible, not just the formal events, but informal too. There are a lot of instances where I can gain very good information from those informal conversations I have with athletes.
Mhm. I do think that sounds like a fantastic idea. But honestly speaking, I would probably only allow it if you're going to have that dedication to be at every event and not just some. And I'm not trying to create an ultimatum, but your dedication is extremely important, especially to high schoolers. They're not very fond of the smoke and mirrors approach. I mean, you come to one game and they never see your face again, that you're not going to be able to create that bond and that trust that's really needed with these young players.
I completely understand that. And in fact, I'm glad you said that because this is something I pride myself on and I expect to be at every event if you allow me to, and which it sounds like you'll have me for every event. As a player, we had a volunteer coach who truly was a volunteer when I played high school basketball. He probably came to practice once a week. He came to just about every home game, which was great, but I saw him on one road game my entire junior year that year, and it was a playoff game. So you could tell that it didn't seem like he really cared about us. It seemed like it was more so something to maybe put on his resume or something of that nature. So I've lived it, and now as a sports psychologist consultant, and that wasn't his position, but he was allowed to join the team, and just the um, level of influence and the ability to be at all those things just wasn't there with him. And so I've lived it and I'm in it right now. And so I can assure you, I will be at every event. It definitely is the best way to interact with high school athletes, in my opinion. And I will eventually become to have a genuine care for these players. I already do a little bit, which seems a little odd. I haven't met them, but I think you and I have a similar goal to help this team be successful. And my version of success might be different than your version of success, but we both want the team to be successful. And I think when it comes down to it is you have to have a genuine care for the athletes. And so with your permission, which you did grant with that one circumstance, I'll make sure that that's definitely something I do. I'll be at every event.
Thank you. I mean, it's definitely a relief to have someone who would be so dedicated to helping our team improve. We too have had our fair share of people who, come and go and aren't there to stay. So my hope is that if you become familiar, that familiar face for the players, they'll develop that trusting relationship with you and feel comfortable opening up about their strengths and weaknesses. I know that can be hard for high schoolers, as well as ask questions.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Yep. My work has the ability to improve success, not only as a player, but as a person as well. And like I mentioned earlier, a key to working with your team is and improving their mental skills is to get them to own their body uh, in pressure packed and stressful situations through things like breathing, concentration, the self talk that we had mentioned earlier, visualization, and so much more. So we'll definitely work together, and I think there can be success here. Shortly after meeting the team and having some initial conversations, I will very purposely begin to assess the individual athlete's needs and weaknesses, like you had pointed out. I will get to know each athlete on a very individual level, which is why it's crucial that I'm around as much as I had asked to be. So far, it seems like we're working pretty well hand in hand. With this being said, there are some key principles that we must truly live out, though. The good news is it seems like you will be on board as per your comment of me attending events. First, without a doubt, the biggest principle is respecting the confidentiality from player to coach, coach to me, and me to the player. So there's a lot of people involved here. The big one where most athletes reveal information will be from player to me. But of course, if they tell you something, or if you and I speak about things, there's that level of confidentiality that I can advise people to talk to other people. Like I might advise you to talk to your players, or I certainly will advise your players to talk to you about some things that they bring up to me. But I will not force them to, and I cannot force them to. There are, of course, an exception or two where it truly puts the athlete's health and well-being at the forefront, and then I might have to bring that up because it's an actual liability issue. But for the most part, if they're talking just about you or they're talking about other players, I can encourage conversations, but that's just between us. And I need to have that because trust is a huge factor to consulting, and we definitely need to have it.
So you won't let me listen into any conversations?
Unfortunately, if a player wants to disclose personal information, no, I would not be able to allow it. Now, not all conversations include sensitive matters. And of course, I would expect you to be around for all group meetings, group sessions, and things of that nature. But your presence, and not even your presence, but rather any coach's presence, can jeopardize my work or the work of any consultant. And so if I sense an athlete has the ability to open up to me, we may take the conversation to a more private place and remove all others from the conversation, not just you, but anybody else, so that we can keep that trust. That will allow me to truly make progress in our work, and we'll end up having that successful team, hopefully. The second thing is there has to be solid, open, and honest communication amongst all parties. This is something I don't take lightly, and I think we're both on the same page with this.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, some conversations may be kept private, and those will mainly be the conversations either between you and me or me and a player, but there will definitely be daily dialogue that will most certainly occur. Third, and again, it seems like you acknowledge this, is I will act in a professional manner. And so this is something that hardly needs to be noted, but I know you can count on, and I know it's something you're hoping to count on, as you alluded to earlier. So not that I needed to hear where you stand with this, but knowing that helps make it even much more important. I will definitely be there every time, every event, practices, and so on and so forth. And finally, I ask for full integrity. Together, we play an important role to the success of your team. I'm only a piece of the pie. I am hardly ever the main reason for success, but I can be the missing reason for success, and mainly the missing piece between a good team and a great team. So it will be important that all roles are clearly defined. There can't be any misleading between you and me when helping assess the team or the athletes. And conversely, I'll hold meetings when appropriate. I'm not going to try to stick you with poor timing of meetings. I won't force things upon you. Like I said, I'm a piece of the pie, and I don't want to be someone else you have to manage. So there will be that daily conversation, and we'll find the right times to impact the athletes so that we are teaching and definitely helping them progress in a successful manner.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate and agree to fully embodying your principles. I get it, and I appreciate everything you said. I understand why. A lot line up with what I ask of the members of our team already, so I think you would really be a great addition.
Perfect. Perfect. That sounds great. I like to leave time for any questions that you might have. So we have a little bit of time left. If you have a question or more that you would like to ask me about myself or my work, is there anything you would like to ask?
Sure. So I do have just one important question. So what does it look like? What is you coming in, working with the players? What is it going to look like for us?
That's a great question, especially like you had mentioned earlier, not having the experience as an athlete or not having the experience so far as a head coach. So it's going to look different in different situations and events, but a lot of my work will be through observations and informal conversations with athletes when I'm hoping you might not even notice. Again, I was an athlete, I was a coach, so I understand the distractions involved with high school sports. And so I won't be another distraction. So that's why a lot of my work is through observations. I'm going to show up. Hopefully, if this is something you want and your athletic director and program is okay with, I'll get on board as soon as possible. And I'm going to try to be as invisible as possible. I'll be there, but I'm hoping that I'm not a distraction and you won't really be able to notice me until we meet afterwards, or we have phone calls afterwards, or have discussions. I'm not going to try to coach your team. That's not my role. My role is specifically with consulting the athletes and then working with you to try and improve the success in the weaknesses and areas for growth that you had pointed out earlier. So you'll be able to access me whenever you need, but when I'm not physically needed, I'll be there observing from a distance. Like I said, like to start as soon as I can, and that's something your athletic director and you will decide upon, but I get there for the preseason activities and definitely through the season and even into the off season, and hopefully multiple years, but I'm sure will be a year-to-year basis. I collect information so that I can make honest and factual decisions. So another big way for me to impact your team is in group forums. So as a coach at the high school level, I do understand, again, I was a coach too, you may not have a ton of time built into your schedule. I'll take any time that I get. But the one thing I am asking for, and that I would ask if I am officially on board, is just for that immediate meeting with the team. Just so that I don't want to go into more than an event or two events, no matter what they are, without everyone knowing who I am. So I would definitely like to have maybe one initial meeting with the entire team, but once the season gets rolling, I know that might not be possible. And so it's an observation and informal meetings. Talk to someone on the bus or getting off the bus. Talk to someone in the training room. That injured player that you had mentioned, I might be able to work with them more, and she might need more work because she's recovering from a tough injury. So it's going to be kind of like that behind the scenes work that I'm hoping eventually has big impact down the road. So to answer your question, it just kind of looks like an extra set of hands. I'm not going to teach the sport, but I'll help the team succeed in the sport.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly what we need. We have a solid coaching staff with experience as well. I think, like I mentioned earlier, it's the mentality of the team that needs work. So I think you're exactly what we need.
Perfect. I hope that this is able to go through and we can start to work together. Are there any other questions before I cut you off?
I do not. Thank you for everything. And I'm going to talk to the athletic director to see how we can get the ball rolling on the process. And we look forward to it.
Perfect. We'll be in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you.